Hey everybody, welcome to Alpha Flight Monday. Last week we looked at the first issue of Alpha Flight under Bill Mantlo and Mike Mignola. We're now following up, of course, with issue number 30, cover mark January. So that would be, what are we at, 86? Yes, January 86 issue. Dig this cover. Way more Mike Mignola, what we normally associate him with, than the cover from the week before. Now, the week before, we have Alpha Flight taking on the Incredible Hulk, which is a great sort of trial by fire for any new team. And granted, Alpha Flight is not technically a new team here, but it is a team with a new creative team on it that is sort of, forging their own legend with Alpha Flight now. So it makes sense, I think, great deal of sense to have them go up against something like the Incredible Hulk. I'll just point this out, by the way. And I got this particular back issue from Atomic Robot Comics and Toys on Etsy. Go check them out if they're still around. I hope they are. I got a few of these Alpha Flights from them when I started really trying to round out my collection. So, Alpha Flight, what are they taking on here? Looks like we got some new enemies to deal with, which is really groovy. Okay. The throb of rotor blades whipping the air resounds across the straits of San Juan de Fuca, denoting a frenzy of activity centered about a Gothic manse that rises from the greenery of Tamarind Island. This is the new home of Alpha Flight. Now, we have seen this mansion. This was a mansion that was left to Walter Lankowski from I think she was an aunt she was a relative, we'll put it that way, who turned out to be a sort of immortal alchemist. You know how families are. And so it was introduced a few issues ago. Now it's being made officially the base of Alpha Flight, now that they once again have government sponsorship, so they have the money. So they're moving in, obviously, enter Scramble, Bill Mantlo writer, Mike Mignola pencils, Gary Talayak inks, Jim Novak letters, Bob Sharon colors, Carl Potts editor, Jim Shooter editor in chief. So we've entered 1986. Holy moly. And so Heather is, and you notice here, now it looks a little less Mike Mignola-y than the cover. He's still developing that style. We got to see a lot of that development happen on Alpha Flight. So Heather's chatting with Gary Cody, who is their liaison with the Canadian government. They're kind of recapping you on what's going on. She's leading Alpha Flight now. The team is coming together, but there are still issues. So she's kind of going over the different characters. This is pretty common at Marvel and DC back in the day. The attitude being that every issue is somebody's first issue, and you want to give them a little something to catch them up on what they're reading so they can become a fan. And we do have an accident here. This machinery that was being held by this net starts to collapse on top of people. Box is initially like, that machinery is invaluable. And Puck is like, so are the lives of these technicians, Box. So they jump in to save everybody. Unfortunately, in the midst of it, Aurora and Northstar touch, which negates their powers, which Box notices. And he rushes in and he catches the stuff before it crushes Aurora. Not bad, huh? For a fellow who's been described as looking like a 56 Buick. And he does. Box had an interesting look back in the day. It was something I kind of liked. So all this stuff being metal, Mr. Jeffries can control it. He's a transmuter. And he's an interesting addition to the team. Doesn't wear a costume, but becomes extremely valuable as time goes on. And so anyway, so all of that is to sort of show the team in action a little bit, get everybody up to date on who everybody is in this new era. Oh, we're going to get a cool page here. And so we're getting now a tour of the new mansion and some of the stuff they're doing. And there's, so you have the upper floors, first floor, second floor, third floor here. And then we have sublevel 1, sublevel 2. I love this kind of stuff. Architects, the firm of Mignola, Mantlo, and Bog. I was always somebody who loved this kind of stuff in comic books. The maps and, the diagrams of stuff, as make-believe as it all was. So, obviously, over the next, 30 or so issues, I'll be going back to those maps constantly to make sure that they're not making any errors whatsoever when they're walking around the mansion, because that would be very, very embarrassing. And if they do it, we're going to catch them. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, there's a commotion outside. So what do we say? Oh, I suggest you do, Mr. Tell him to let go of that stuff, Boxy, or I'll turn it on him. I suggest you do as Mr. Jeffries says. The equipment is our private stock, and we will tend to its placement. But it's nothing but toys. Toys we saw your friend transform from machinery no one authorized. What? If you're saying we have to come bowing and scraping to you every time we want to install some new device, you can take your government funding and stick it up your box. They're just following orders. Hold it, Gary. Stop right there. Despite reservations, I took you at your word when you said Alpha'd be free from government interference. No strings means no strings. We won't be answerable to Ottawa or anyone else. We're to be given total autonomy, complete authority to take the government's funding and use it as we deem necessary. Absolute privacy in all we do, or Alpha Flight goes back to being free agents. There is a second's astonished silence, and then, you're the boss, lady. Yes, Heather, you are, and Mac would be proud. Well, gentlemen, shall we let Alpha enjoy their new home? So, nice show of leadership by Heather, and I like that, this guy was more or less an ally of Mac and Heather and stuff, and so he's not like what was that character? Peter Gyrich, who was the liaison for the Avengers and freaking hated, all the superheroes and such, and was always a pain in the butt. So this guy's not that guy. Although, look, if I was a taxpayer, I would not be thrilled with this deal necessarily. So we'll see what happens ultimately. We have an interesting line here too. So they're putting this stuff together, and you can see how Jeffries can just take all these items and assemble them into whatever is sort of on his mind, right? And she says, I'm more impressed each time he uses his power, Roger. And Jeffries says, impressed? You should have seen what my kid brother could do. What? I personally keyed all the data Matt gave me about Mr. Jeffries into Alpha Flight's computer, and I never came across any mention of his having a younger brother. You are a mystery, Mr. Jeffries. One I intend to solve. So, good story hooks right there. Well done. Meanwhile, we have a visit. Shaman visiting Snowbird and her human non-superhero guys. And her boyfriend, Corporal Thompson, of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And so, Shaman's going through some tough stuff here. He has lost his faith. He's lost his courage because of screwing up with his daughter again. Although, again, I kind of screwed up with her, but not entirely his fault, in my opinion. And as he leaves, Snowbird starts to transform into her superheroic self. You will not mind if I follow and see to his safety? Could I stop a goddess? Should I try? I love you, and I will heed your heart. Then let's look after your friend together. Okay. Later that night, there are Aurora and Northstar, poor kids. They were separated at birth, never knew of each other's existence until Mac brought them together, and now traumatized by the loss of Walter Lankowski and the alteration in their powers that keeps them from touching, they're more apart than ever. I'll leave them to sort out their souls in peace. Good stuff. Mantlo is a hell of an excellent writer. I mean, this is the dude who took comic books based on toy lines that had nothing and turned them into classics that frankly outlasted the toy lines. And I remember to this day. So what we're getting a lot of in this particular story is we're learning about the team all over again. It's sort of like, in a certain way, last issue was like the second Alpha Flight #1. Here's the follow-up. And it's trying to make sure everybody understands who these characters are, what's driving them, what are the story hooks that are going to happen. We see Puck in pain in his room. Nobody knows what the origin of that pain is. We're going to find that out at some point. So we're talking a lot about secrets here, secrets of these characters. And Heather then checks in on Roger Box and Mr. Jeffries. No, have you two gone out of your minds? How could you? Miss Hudson, Heather, I can explain. So what are they doing? They're working on what looks like Mac's original super suit that he, it essentially killed him when it overloaded, and then was used by this robot called Delphine Courtney to masquerade as him and to almost, kill Alpha Flight. And so obviously, they're trying to deal with this battle suit and put it back together. And the robot too. So you're trying to put the remains of the robot suit? Oh, remains of the robot suit back together. Okay, I didn't think they were messing with the robot. So she thinks that's risky, and obviously has a lot of negative, feelings about that. I've got to stop letting every little reminder of Mac set me off like that. He's dead, and I've got to pick up the pieces of my life and learn to go on without him. That's going to be a big part of Alpha Flight under Mantlo. More so than John Byrne dealt with it in his 2 years. You're going to have a lot of Heather Hudson and her development as a character moving forward. And I'll say again, an early comic book crush of mine. She was one of the characters that really attracted me to Alpha Flight when I started reading it, and one of the main reasons I stuck with it. And, it's because she becomes a very important character in the book. And they do some really nice work with that. And so she's saying, well, if we could get the suit back together, it could restore some much needed power to Alpha Flight. Its wearer, Mr. Jeffries, maybe? So who's going to wear the super suit if they get it back together? And of course, we take a break for Spider-Man trying to, I guess, save Captain Crunch. One of the lost stories of the Marvel Universe. And so now she's also looking into, what is this kid brother, So Mr. Jeffries does have a brother, Lionel, a surgeon in Montreal. Does power run in the Jeffries family? I can't go running off now with the dust still settling around here. The group leader should stay put. Who am I kidding? I'm pretty useless here at the moment, but Mac's mission as head of Department H was to track down people with power. And as leader of Alpha Flight, I've inherited that task, so I guess I must. So Puck awakes to somebody heading off, and it is Heather, who heads off to Montreal. She has her Alpha Flight priority clearance. She's at this sort of hospital. And so she wants to see this person, this Lionel Jeffries. And he says, well, this doctor says, well, nobody's ever been allowed to visit the patient about whom you've inquired. Patient? But I'm here to see Dr. Lionel Jeffries. Was he a physician once? Oh, yes. I remember seeing, I guess how he's saying it is. Was he a physician once? Oh, yes. I remember seeing that in his files. But I'm afraid Dr. Jeffries hasn't practiced or done anything else for quite a few years. And so here he is, all locked up and kind of almost looks like a rubber room. They got these cords attached to him. Is he mad? I suppose so. I've never been involved in his case, but why else would he be held in a padded cell, kept in a straitjacket, be fed intravenously, and denied any human contact? No one's supposed to be allowed in. You're his first visitor in years, and only because of your security clearance. So they let her in. Why? Well, She has a security clearance. And she does the worst thing she can do. She touches him. A sudden lunge. Well, she reached out and he lunges forward. A sudden lunge, and the only portion of the patient's flesh left exposed by his all-enveloping straitjacket makes contact with Heather's hand. Thank you, friend of my brother, for setting Scramble free. Off in a corner of the padded cell, Heather McNeil Hudson starts to scream. And Alpha Flight gets the alert. Oh, hold on a second. I think we missed a page here. There we go. Okay. Like, wow, they got really involved fast. An hour later, I can see we're not going to make it as a one omni-ship team. No, not if our leader insists on sneaking off alone. So, of course, not North Star's being a jerk. So they are responding, and you see all these twisted-looking creatures from within Montreal General Hospital. Hundreds of howling horrors burst forth. Destroy them, Alpha Flight. Don't you even want to find out what they are first, North Star? Our sarcastic speedster is too busy assuming a leadership role to notice that these creatures all wear scraps of hospital garb. You mean they are doctors, patients? They were, Aurora. Before having their anatomies hopelessly transmutated by my brother, Scramble, the mixed-up man. So, he does have a brother. His brother does have powers. And he can transmute flesh. And so we get a little bit of the background of him. They both were among the thousands of Canadians who enlisted in the United States Army during the Vietnam War. Lionel as a medic, Madison as a mechanic, first class. But then, kaboom. What was left of the squad after the blast didn't make a very pretty picture. Body parts were scattered all about the landscape like pieces of some demented jigsaw puzzle. Lionel must have felt like chief surgeon in a slaughterhouse. He tried to transmute those pieces back together to make the dead whole and restore them to life. When he couldn't do it, something snapped. And so Madison had to use his powers to bind him. But he is now unbound. And so they managed to get in and find that Heather has been also altered, mutated, so to speak, by this dude. She must have been the first. Lionel's nuts. We got to find him. Stop him. You lead the others, Mr. Jeffries. I'll stay with Heather. So sorry, Puck. Didn't know. There, my angel. Easy. Puck will not leave you. Did you hear how caringly Puck spoke to Heather? He was just trying to comfort her in her affliction. I've long suspected that Heather occupies a very special place in Puck's heart. She ain't going to live long, all twisted the way she is now, Boxy, unless we can get my brother to unscramble her. And so they head into battle with all these poor creatures who have been scrambled by this guy. We get some combat between these two. We hear again about how Aurora is split into two different personalities. And so Box is maybe the perfect person to go to war against Scramble. But he's dealing with some very powerful, creatures as well. Meanwhile, it will be all right. You'll see. Alpha Flight will find Scramble and make him undo this evil. And then you will be as lovely as ever, eh? Did you find me lovely, Puck? I don't feel as if I'll ever be beautiful again. The terror in her tone tells Puck that the deformity twisting Heather's body is shaking her sanity as well. He knows all too well what that kind of pain is like. So we're getting nice. See, that's Mantlo. Nice little hints. He's really good at advancing the story. I mean, everybody talks a lot about Chris Claremont, and they should. Mantlo cannot be undersold as a great writer of comic books. So Jeffries finds Scramble in the morgue. Great character design. Great image here. Terrifying image as well. And the two go at it. Now he's got like this sort of gun and wants to capture him. And so we get this basically this fight between these two brothers. And we're really getting to see what Madison Jeffries is capable of at this point. And perhaps because two because two brothers possessed of, and they misspelled two, sorry, of similar powers are locked together, Scramble sees his own disordered brain in juxtaposition with that of his saner sibling. Synapse by synapse, hands capable of shaping organic matter use Madison's id as a model for untwisting Scramble's mind. Until, hey, little brother, welcome back. So really nice, rather than just trying to kill him or something. And look, he's starting to twist Jeffries. Jeffries grabs a hold of him. And because of that, Scramble manages to restore his own sanity, which allows him to restore Heather to her normal self. And she kind of, he touches her and she cringes at the touch. Having been violated by him once, Heather can never feel easy in Scramble's presence again. And he just wants forgiveness. She says, I can give that. In the aftermath of the battle, no one thinks to check a certain slab in the morgue, on which rests the last body, the insane Scramble reassembled out of severed parts. Now rejoined, those parts take on a life of their own, rise and shamble off into the night. Who could that be? Well, look back a few issues, and you'll find out who that could be. Also, you could read this last thing, Deadly Ernest. And that's who it is. Deadly Ernest showed up in earlier issues. A very interesting character. Alpha Flight number 30, January of 1986. A new era is born for Alpha Flight. What do you think of this one, folks? What do you think of the story? What do you think of Mantlo as a writer? I'd love to hear in the comments. Let me know, and obviously I'll get back to you on those comments as quickly as I can when I get a chance, because I do like to keep a conversation going, if at all possible. If you enjoyed this video, please like and maybe think of subscribing and sharing with a friend. I do Alpha Flight every Monday. We got 22 issues left, 22 weeks left, 22 issues left of 2024. So tune in every Monday if you want to get more Alpha Flight. I do other videos during the week as well, and you might enjoy those too. Pop culture reviews of various kinds, and generally, I try to keep it positive. So until next time, God bless everyone. Please be kind to one another. Have a little fun out there. And I'll see you soon again in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.